Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Trees, a podcast presented by Cedarwood Financial Partners. I'm the host, Alex Murphy, and today we have a very special guest that I'm excited about, David Houghton. He is a senior corporate counsel at Wealth.com, a columnist for Kitsis, and before joining Wealth.com, he was a team lead in advanced planning at Commonwealth Financial Network. He's a graduate of UMass Amherst and earned his JD at the Massachusetts School of Law. He's admitted to the Massachusetts and New Hampshire Bar, as well as the U.S. District Court, District of Massachusetts, and the U.S. District Court, Court of New Hampshire. Also, on top of all of that, he's a certified private wealth advisor practitioner. So, well qualified to give us all the information that we could possibly want today. David, how are you?
I'm great. Yeah, it's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. I'll start here. I've been following you and connected with you on LinkedIn for a while now, probably since we joined Commonwealth a little over 3 years ago, and you're one of my favorite follows. So let me start there, I guess. What got you into LinkedIn marketing? Is it hard for you? Is it easy for you? You're hilarious and entertaining for sure.
I appreciate it. It's really funny. I was like notorious when I was in college. I was in college at the same time as Mark Zuckerberg when Facebook started, and everyone was jumping on board. I did not have social media whatsoever until probably about 5 years ago. I didn't even have a Facebook account, Instagram account. I might have had a LinkedIn profile that I set up, but I never posted or looked at it. And a few years ago, you know, part of what I was thinking was I want to be more proactive with the education that we're giving on estate planning because it was all incoming. I was fielding calls from advisors, fielding emails, and being very reactive. And so it started out that I had a post and it got a lot of good reactions. And I was like, oh, I might have something here. I started writing a lot of articles. I wrote for Kitsis, and part of my thought was, you know what? I should probably promote this more. I should probably get out there a little more. And when I started doing it, I started getting traction, and I really started to build this community, and I started to really love it. So it's really not work for me. It's actually not even like it's not even like a demand of my job or anything. A lot of times it's in my free time. I just love generating content. I love being educational. And so I intend on keep on doing it, as long as I can. It's just, I find it very fulfilling, and I hope people get a lot out of it.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing because it's an incredible talent. It's not easy to do. Anyone listening, connect with David. You'll learn some things. I truly feel like, for us, when we created our own brand, it was, we're in finance. How much of ourselves can we be versus how much do we need to be financial advisors, and how much do we need our firm to look like all the major wirehouses and firms like that? The longer we've been doing this, the more we've realized that we can truly be ourselves and people appreciate it. And it's connecting well with advisors who we're partnering with. It still connects well with clients. I think they've known our true selves since the beginning, right? But that's what I love about your content is I feel like I'm seeing a piece of you and everything. I mean, I've seen, things about, I believe, Michael Jordan, going back to your childhood, and it's also educational. And I love to learn, especially in this space, which, that's why I want to have you on today is I feel like our world is not always well educated in estate planning. And so I know you're going to bring a ton of value to our listeners today on this as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Estate planning is a bleak topic. It's hard to discuss with clients. It's difficult to the extent that you can make it fun and you can make it engaging. That's really what I'm trying to do to the extent that I can, because only a third of people have an estate plan, right? If you go up to someone on the street and you say, is having a will or having an estate plan, is that important? They're going to say yes. And then your follow-up question is, do you have a will? They're going to say no, which is pretty crazy, right? But it's just such a burdensome process. It's emotionally taxing. And so to the extent that you can, make it fun, make it engaging, and motivate people, that's really what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I think the expense side of it too, and the unknown of I'm paying for something, it's not cheap, and am I even doing the right thing? Is it even covering what I really want it to? It's definitely overwhelming for people. I mean, obviously 2/3 of people are too overwhelmed to even get to it. So let me start there. You're in a really interesting space to me. So you're in a world where you're mixing law and finance. How'd you end up there?
You know, so I was an estate planning attorney working with clients directly for the better part of a decade to start my career. And it was great. I loved it. I got to the point where I started to sort of feel like a salesman, where I was kind of just churning out estate plans. Clients would come in and I'd pass it off to the paralegal. They'd create the estate plan, and then I'd have the next consultation, next consultation, next consultation. And I didn't really feel like I was practicing law to a certain extent, but I also didn't feel fulfilled from this aspect of educationally. Like I love this stuff. I'm a nerd when it comes to financial planning, when it comes to estate planning. So when I saw the opportunity to be in a educational consultant role going over to Commonwealth, I jumped at it because it just seemed to me like the perfect role where I could be working with financial advisors to help to teach them estate planning concepts, financial planning concepts that they could pass on to the clients and that could help make an impact. And I think it does in a lot of ways because the financial advisors are such a key component to the estate planning process and they get left out a lot. When I was practicing law, I can't remember a lot of times a financial planner was really involved all that much, or the financial advisor was involved all that much. They might have referred the client over. But then this was the first time I was meeting the client. I was talking to them. I tried to uncover their goals and priorities and create a plan for them. But the financial advisor just has so much context to draw off of. They meet with that client a lot. They probably had a long-term relationship with them. They know their family dynamics, their level of sophistication, their behavioral tendencies, all these sorts of things that would have been really critical to help them with the estate planning process. And this is already after someone entered my office. I would have liked to have the financial advisor involved. Imagine if earlier on in the process, the advisor was involved in trying to motivate them to get it done. It's all that much more powerful. And so, once I started in that role, I started to see that this is a really great area to be in. It's something that should and will grow because the way that estate planning has been the current model of how you get your estate plan done. It's burdensome, it's costly, it's time consuming. Something had to give. And I think financial advisors were the way to get people motivated.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, in essence, what I feel like I'm hearing is the estate plan is a little bit ignorant to the client's true self if the financial advisor or somebody who knows them that well isn't involved in the conversation at all, and they're generally not involved in
Right.
it. Do you think that's predominantly because the advisors aren't the ones bringing it up, or do you think clients are just, it's two different worlds? I don't even think that they cross, and I don't, they don't even think about it.
I think it's certainly both, but I do also think that advisors are a little bit concerned to bring it up. There's statistics out there that most clients want their financial advisor to help them with their estate planning, but only I think like 93% want their financial advisor to help them with estate planning, but only like 22% actually do offer that as a service. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think the disciplines have just been bifurcated for a long time where it's stay in my lane sort of thing. But now, I think with holistic financial planning and people marketing themselves as doing comprehensive financial planning, I think estate planning is a big part of that, right? The CFP, that's a big part of the curriculum in some of the other disciplines when you get credentials. Like I have the CPWA credential where estate planning is a big part of it because estate planning is a big part of financial planning. And so I think advisors should be more involved in it. I think a lot of times they're concerned. They probably have unauthorized practice of law concerns that it's kind of going outside of their license and they might be stepping over the lines. But there's easy ways to stay in your lane where you can be educational and you can help lead them to the right place to get these services without stepping over the line.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that, I would say a lot of advisors are somewhat conservative on risking getting in trouble or compliance, right? And that makes sense, but we still want to make sure we're bringing the uttermost value to our clients. So, from your perspective, why is estate planning so crucial for financial planning?
I just think that no matter how old you are, you can benefit from an estate plan. There's no downside to it. So we say that only about a third of people have an estate plan. It's actually not true, right? Everyone has an estate plan. It's just, did you put it in place or did your state legislature put it in place? And I don't think you'd prefer that the state politicians put your estate plan in place because you're probably going to end up in court. It's not going to go the way that you want. And so, it's forgotten a lot. It's obviously the easiest thing to put off because it's literally the last thing you need to worry about. It's selfless, right? To put a estate plan in place because usually when it's going to take effect, you're not probably going to either have capacity or you're going to pass away, but your loved ones are going to be left with a bag. And goes across the entire, as far as an advisor is concerned, entire net worth spectrum of their book, all the ages. As early as someone who's 18 years old, people don't think about this. A child who's on your tax return as a dependent, they're on your health insurance as a dependent, they live with you, maybe they're headed off to college. If something happens to them, they're in a car accident. We all know how college is. If there's some kind of crazy thing that occurs at college and they become incapacitated, they're not going to have anything in place that puts the parent in a position to be able to make decisions for them legally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if something
Yeah.
happens to the parents are not going to be able to make a decision for them legally. Wouldn't it be great if those kids had powers of attorney, healthcare powers of attorney, designating their parents as the guardian or as the power of attorney rather than having to go to court? That would be awesome, but a lot of people don't think about it because those kids are not going to go sit down with an attorney. They're not going to get a plan in place unless there's something super accessible for them to be able to have it happen. As you go down the line, you get a little bit older, you start having children. Now, what's the big priority? Who are the guardians for my children? Do I want to dictate that, or do I want the court to dictate that based on who shows up to the courthouse to decide who's going to be the guardian of my children? That, especially with spouses, they each have in-laws. That can be, a testy subject that you really want to drill down and have a plan for. And then as you get older, obviously priorities change. You start building net worth. Now sophistication starts to come in and you start needing more tax planning for the kids. You never know what's going to happen, whether they have substance abuse issues, divorce issues, whether they're just not mature and they shouldn't handle the money. So it's really important from financial planning to have an estate plan in place because you've built this wealth all over your lifetime. Do you just want to see it get dissipated and go away? Or do you want to preserve it for the next generation? And I think most clients would say, I want to preserve it for the next generation. This isn't just for me. I want to make sure that I'm leaving a legacy and I'm putting my family in the best position possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I do want to give kudos to you. I believe you made a post about the 18 to 23-year-olds at some point, and it actually increased the amount of conversations I was having with clients about that topic, and several of them have had power of attorneys put in place. Most of them just don't think about it because they're on their
Yep.
insurance and they're still their little kid, and
Right.
and candidly, they're still probably the 8-year-old that they remember, and all of a sudden something happens and they have no control. So I appreciate you making that post and increasing my conversations.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think it's funny. I'm glad to hear that, obviously. I think that's a big service to the client and not necessarily to the child, even though it does ultimately benefit the child. But the client gets so much more peace of mind knowing that they're in that position and it's something they never would have thought of. So it's such a value add. And then just the side benefit is you're forming a relationship with that next generation that you wouldn't otherwise. They don't have investable assets yet. So there's not a lot to talk to them about, but they're going to eventually inherit that money and they may end up being a client. And 90% of the time they take their money elsewhere. So even from a business perspective, it makes sense to form that.
yeah, absolutely. So when you're speaking with advisors, what are the red flags that you tell them, look out for this? This should, in your mind, spark an estate plan conversation.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times what happens is clients will get their estate plan done and they'll breathe a big sigh of relief and they'll say, got it done. I'm good. And a lot of time will go by. Theoretically, they think they're good forever. 10, 15 years will go by. Laws change, family dynamics change, all these things change. And I like to tell this story a lot that I was going through some stuff in my mother's basement. and I found a CD, and it was a burn CD. If anyone remembers what those were, I had burned it like probably when I was in high school or something. And it
Absolutely,
said
yeah.
on it "new mix." I had written in marker on it "new mix." So I went in my car, I put it into the CD player. I was shocked my car even had a CD player. It's a newer car. And because I'd never thought to use the CD player, right? Because who would?
Yeah.
Because you have everything on Spotify and you just connect by Bluetooth. And so I put it in, and I was listening, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I like this song. This song's a classic. I love it. This one's still good. But, this was what, 20 years ago? If you think about it, like your tastes have evolved in every single way, in your clothing, in your music, your movies. Why do you think that your estate plan is probably exactly how you want it if you made it 15, 20 years ago? There's probably some things that need to change. And so the big things that, typically stand out for me is number one, you have estate tax provisions that were instituted in a prior regime when legislation was different, when you really needed to do estate tax planning at a much lower threshold, when there wasn't what's called portability, where spouses can share the estate tax exemption. And that really drove attorneys, and rightly so, to make estate plans that drove estate tax planning to the point that it was mandatory and could cause people to lose a step up in basis, and could cause a lot of capital gains unnecessarily, because now we're in a situation where we're going to the point next year with the one big beautiful bill that there's going to be $15 million per person they can leave when they pass away. That means that a lot of these families don't really need to do a lot of estate tax planning. They should have
Hmm.
flexible provisions in their trust just in case things change. But in the past, there were a lot of those rigid provisions that they probably want to take a look at now just to make sure they're not in that situation. The other really big one I see is digital assets. So clients who set up their estate plans years ago, before we were thinking about things like social media, cryptocurrency, Gmail, camera rolls on your iPhone, all these things that you might want to have someone have access to or to
Hmm.
pass them on to. If you didn't have provisions in your trust or your will or your power of attorney, you might have a hard time getting someone to get access to those nowadays. And obviously now it's ubiquitous. Anyone who creates an estate plan now, they're going to have that provision in there, but just wasn't thought of years ago. So I think there's a lot of things that just become stale if you're not updating the estate plan, keeping on it. And if you just create the estate plan and think, okay, I put it in place, I've put who I want my assets to go to, I put who I want my executor, my trustee to be, I'm good. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense to me. Some of those things didn't even exist if you started and created your estate plan 20 years ago, right? And before we move on, I can't let this go amiss. Do you remember any of the songs that were on that burned CD?
There was some Limp Bizkit.
All right.
Let me think. There was some Limp Bizkit. I remember there was some Beastie Boys, Cypress Hill. I think I had some Rolling Stones. It was eclectic.
Some of it sounds pretty good to
I
me.
might have been trying to impress a girl. I don't remember. You know,
You gotta love that. Uh, no, I think that makes sense. I mean, when you look at the financial industry too, and you consider when I started my career and we were predominantly A shares, and then where we're at today, and then you look at old annuities and you look at where they are today, it's almost like looking at a flip phone and then looking at an iPhone.
right?
Things change, right? And it should make sense to all of us that it would change in this world too, but for some reason we don't always connect those dots.
Right. Yeah.
Can you give us a situation? I just want to put a little fire under all the advisors out there on why they need to do this. Do you have any scenarios that you've seen where a poorly executed plan has cost somebody dearly?
I have. Actually, this was even before I practiced estate planning. And so when I started practicing law, it was around 2009, 2010, which was not a great time for the economy. And so when I started practicing law, it was actually in bankruptcy because unfortunately business was booming, right? And so had a lot of clients. One of the clients that came in was in significant debt. They were struggling, tons of credit card debt, uh, really nothing to show for it as far as assets. They were a perfect bankruptcy candidate. But going through the uncovery process, I learned that their parent had transferred their home into their name before they had passed away. And they did this kind of as a do-it-yourself estate planning technique, right? I'm going to avoid probate. I'm just going to put the property into your name. That way I don't have to do a will. I have beneficiaries on my accounts. I don't need anything. Everything's going to avoid everything. Come to find out that the mother had said, when I pass away, what I want you to do is I want you to sell the home and I want you to split the proceeds with your sibling. And so that happened about a couple years before this person was sitting in my office. And so they did it. The parent passed away. They sold the property. They split it with their sibling, hundreds of thousands of dollars. This person had unfortunately had a run of bad luck and they had blown through the money. Their sibling was probably pretty well off and doing okay. Well, what's going to happen is the bankruptcy trustee is going to say, whoa, hold on a second. You're asking to discharge your debt. You're in debt. You're asking to discharge your debt. Less than 2 years ago, you gave hundreds of thousands of dollars away to someone because you did that voluntarily, right? It was not a part of an estate plan. It's not legally theirs. You made a gift. And that would have resulted in the bankruptcy trustee suing the sibling to return those funds, which is devastating. Wow. And on top of that, the other issue was since the mother had transferred the property to the child during lifetime and then passed away, there was no longer a step up in basis. And so when they sold the property, they had to pay unnecessary capital gains taxes because there would have been a step up in basis at death. And that's one of those situations where very simply, obviously a revocable trust would have been best to avoid probate and to transfer the property, but even a will in that scenario would have been a better result than what happened. And so, when you try to do things on your own, you think you can avoid probate on your own, you think you're smarter than the system, there can be some devastating consequences that you can't think of because that mother it probably didn't occur to her that her child was going to get into such significant debt, or maybe they had it and she just didn't know about it yet. But these are the types of things that can happen.
Yeah, that is devastating. I think that's the perfect word for it. And unfortunately, I've seen a few things, slightly different but similar. One of my clients inherited an IRA that their parents wanted them to split between 3 siblings, so they landed all the taxation on that. I've had clients who didn't have power of attorney who then became incapacitated and the spouse couldn't access the funds for the hospital bills. I mean, there's so much that makes this an important thing. And so the second one of those scenarios happened for me probably in year 1 or 2 of my career. And it haunts me to this day that we had to go through that, and I'll never forget it. So estate planning and I guess power of attorneys are technically estate planning, but it's life planning. It's so important to me.
And I think that's a really critical point, is that a lot of people, when people think about estate planning, they think about where am I leaving my property when I die? But what happens to me if I become incapacitated during my life is maybe just as important that you're planning for. And a lot of people don't think about that. And it's just really important that you have these documents in place, because if you don't, as we both know, custodians aren't going to allow anyone to access the property without a court order. And then that court order is probably going to be more limited than what a power of attorney could offer as far as what transactions they can do, things of that nature. So it's just so critical.
Yeah. Well, so how often do you think people should be reviewing their estate plans?
It's a common question. I would personally say annually, but and the reason I would say annually, and I wouldn't have said this in the past, is because it's become so much more streamlined with technology to be able to quickly use AI to quickly summarize documents and quickly be able to generate a report that shows who have you elected as beneficiary, who are your trustees, and all these things that you can pretty streamlined be able to review these things. Reasonably, how often are you going to need to actually update your estate plan? I think, probably once every 3 to 5 years is probably something that will come up that you need to make some kind of amendment. So I think every 3 to 5 years, taking a close look at it is really important. Okay. But in the interim, certainly any life event, so death of birth of a child, or obviously death of a child, birth of grandchildren, divorce, personal divorce, or divorce of your beneficiaries, changing states, changing residence. That's a big one. So there's all these life events. So I would say the earlier of every 3 to 5 years, or if a major life event occurs, just check in with your advisor just to make sure and see if there's anything they can point out that could be a bit of a concern that should make you look to see whether you should explore further into updating it.
Gosh, I think that's great. And from an advisor's perspective, the thought of, oh, my client told me their child's getting divorced. Well, I should initiate a conversation around, well, does that impact your estate plan at all? That's something to consider for sure. I want to give an extra nugget to advisors as they're in their annual reviews and they're thinking, okay, I know I need to be talking about estate planning, but I don't really know how to get there. From your vantage point, what is a great question to initiate that conversation?
It's a good question. I mean, I think the first question is, do you feel comfortable that if something happens to you, your wealth is going to get transferred in the way that you would want, right? Because I don't think people necessarily understand the implications of when something happens. I think that people feel like they're invincible. Certainly if you're younger, you do. People feel like they're invincible and they aren't being prompted to think of these situations. And not just beyond themselves, but beyond their spouse, beyond their children. And so, as an estate planner, it's not just one question that we ask. It's a series of questions. Well, what if this happens? Okay. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? I want everything to go to my spouse. Okay. What if they're not living? What if they're incapacitated? What if they pass away? I want to go to my child. Okay. What if something happens to them? What if they have a substance abuse issue? And so I think getting clients to think about all these contingencies in their brain as realities versus things that they don't think are going to happen is really important, because we're all going to die, unfortunately. And unfortunately, prior to dying, a lot of us are going to be incapacitated. We need something in place to be able to dictate where things are going to go. So if advisors can just find the right way to prompt the emotional response with their client to think, oh, gosh, if I get incapacitated, then they're going to have to go to court. Or my current documents has my brother, who I don't talk to anymore, as my power of attorney. If you can just prompt those conversations and get an emotional response, it's the best way to motivate the client, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that is wonderful. And I'll say from an advisor's perspective, again, when you look at your clients, other than the elderly, you can't really envision anything happening to them either. You just think, oh, this relationship's going to continue for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And I'm going to see them grow older and I'm going to see their family grow. And it's hard to envision that anything could happen. And so we have to stretch ourselves in that space too, to say, let's be realistic. We all say, yeah, we know we're going to die someday, but we all think that's probably down the road, not anytime soon. And so we have to stretch ourselves to start that conversation probably earlier than we're comfortable with sometimes.
Right.
But, I do want to segue a little bit into wealth.com and let you share about wealth.com. I personally have been doing a lot of research and spending time with your team. And so I think it's a really neat idea in general. And so I'd be curious, what took you from Commonwealth to wealth.com, and then share a little bit about the tool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret that I have a passion for estate planning and for financial planning. It's just, it's something I love. I'm a nerd. And I love to, as much as I can, get the word out about it. So when I saw the opportunity with wealth.com, I saw what the mission was and making estate planning more accessible. I just wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to help build it. I wanted to help support the brand and get the word out and help build a really great product that more and more people could use. And so what wealth.com is it's a technology platform that is available to financial advisors to use with their clients. And essentially, it offers tools across the net worth spectrum. So whether you have a client who's mass affluent to high net worth and they just need their documents, they need wills, powers of attorney, healthcare documents, revocable trusts, the financial advisor can make that accessible to the client while staying compliant, while staying out of UPL zone, being able to get their client to get documents in place. And we have incredible support available to be able to help those clients through that process. And also a network of attorneys that are available if they need one to be able to help them. And then, I think, just as important is being able to visualize existing estate plans. So we are backed by Google Ventures. That was our Series A, one of our biggest investors, or our biggest investor. And really, we've poured ourselves into the artificial intelligence and being able to read those existing estate plans to be able to pull out the key details and provide a summary within a minute. And then taking it from there and being able to model out the estate for those high net worth, ultra high net worth clients to look at what kind of estate tax liability are you looking at? How is this estate flowing, and showing it in really nice models that are visually pleasing to the client that they can understand, and also offering educational materials. So really, the idea behind wealth.com is to revolutionize estate planning, and it really runs the gamut as far as who it can help. It can help a advisor with their entire book. So those advisors that are hesitant to get into estate planning, maybe they don't have a history with it, or they think that they'd be stepping over the line into attorney territory. We really built it for financial advisors to keep them safe, but also to make sure that they could feel comfortable getting into this conversation, because it is becoming such a big industry. There's so few people who have estate plans in place, and they are such a key motivator that I think it's, from a business perspective and also from the perspective of just helping clients to get more, more peace of mind. I think it's a great tool. So that's wealth.com. That's why that's why I came over. That's why I'm proud to be here.
Yeah, I love that. For me, a lot of those things resonate. It gives me peace of mind that my clients have peace of mind, and also that if something happens to them, they're going to be okay. It candidly can be a revenue generator for people as well, but most importantly, it's taking care of your clients on a deeper level. And I'm sure that referrals will come from that as well, because how many advisors are that tied in to the estate planning process? I'd say likely very few.
Right. Yeah. And the other aspect is, we talked about this, bringing in the next generation. We've got this great wealth transfer going on. There's something like $120 trillion. It's going to change hands over the next couple of decades. It's a great way to make inroads with the next generation, right? To form a relationship with them. And I know my parents would have felt this way. I'm sure I'll feel this way. If you can have someone who is motivating and giving an easy way for their children to get an estate plan in place, your client themselves may become more sticky while forming a relationship with that next generation. So it can be a win all around for the advisor, for their business, for the client, for peace of mind, and for society as a whole, just for getting more estate plans in place.
Yeah, that's a great point. Less money getting stuck in the system. Right. Well, fantastic. David, this has been incredibly valuable. I've enjoyed it, and I know our listeners are going to get so much value from this. So thanks for taking the time with us, and thanks for all the time that you spend on social media and writing blogs on Kitsis, because I drink it all up, and I know there's a lot of people out there that do, and you may not hear that enough, but you're bringing a ton of value to us and our world.
Great. This was great. I was happy to be here. Hope to talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for visiting with us, and we'll talk to you soon.